I was a teenage nerd.
I was a Teenage Frankenstein.
Oh, that sounds much more interesting.
Mine sounds way cooler. It's oldies week on the horror guys.
Certainly is. That's a bunch of old stuff.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk about some horror movies.
We got 5 more for you this week.
All 5 are ones that I had never seen before.
Oh, you're not really? Okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 3 of them I definitely hadn't seen. I'm not sure about one of them.
Okay. Yeah.
One of them I had seen before.
Well,
what do we got?
Well, we go back to the golden age of the 50s with I Was a Teenage Frankenstein from 1957. And a year later, 1958's I Bury the Living. And then up to 1970, we have Count Yorga, Vampire.
That one I'd seen before.
Which was also known as The Loves of Count Yorga, I believe, in some places.
There's a story with that.
There is, yeah. And 1976's Dracula and Son, a Christopher Lee appearance.
Sorta,
yeah.
Well, it's definitely a Christopher Lee appearance. It's sort of a Dracula appearance.
And then I guess we can't call 2003 really an oldie, but that was 22 years ago.
That's an oldie.
Yeah. Final Destination Part 2.
Yeah, classics, that's like the 40s and 50s. But oldies, probably has a much looser.
I guess it depends on how you
If you turn on the radio station, 2003 is probably an oldie.
There are people who are now adults legally who were not born yet when this movie came out. So
there are college graduates.
So therefore,
this movie
it is an oldie.
Yep. Okay, that's an oldie.
Yeah.
All right.
That's one definition, I suppose.
Hey, you know who won an award this week?
Frankenstein?
No, us.
Oh, we did?
We were on the FeedSpot Top 100 Horror Podcasts.
Nice.
They're kind of mid-listy, but it's nice to be on there.
Yeah, it is. Somebody noticed.
Yeah.
Somebody likes us.
We will have a link in the show notes to the FeedSpot Top 100 Horror Movies, and maybe you can find some other fun things to listen to.
Horror podcast.
Well, yes, podcast, not movies.
Top 100, yeah.
Top 100 movies, that would take some time.
It would, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, that was pretty cool. Anyway, the show is brought to you, as always, by the Horror Guys Guides. Go over to www.horrorguysstore.com works, I believe, still.
Yeah, it does.
Or, brianshell.com works, too. That's where the fastest way to find all of them.
Links to everything.
Everything.
And all the other nifty things that Brian has done, too.
It does. It's not just for horror.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah, what do we got this week? We've got I Was a Teenage Vampire. Frankenstein.
Teenage Frankenstein.
Not to be confused with those other teenage movies of 1957.
There was a teenage werewolf and was there a teenage mummy? Teenage something. I don't know.
Certainly
a number of teen-geared movies, yeah.
Directed by Herbert L. Stork, written by Herman Cohen and Abram Candell. Stars Whit Bissell, Phyllis Coates, and Robert Burton. Hour and 14 minutes. I like them when they're short.
On the short side. They get right to it.
And I don't have a trailer for you this week, but you can watch the entire thing on YouTube for free, which is even better.
It's that kind of movie.
Spoiler free.
Well, Professor Frankenstein, who is a descendant of that Frankenstein, well, he has a full facility at his disposal in the high-tech modern age of 1957. All the equipment available, plus he has an alligator pit in his lab for disposing of bodies and parts.
As all reputable scientists do.
Yes. His ego is big, and so are his plans for advancing science, regardless of the cost.
Alligators are expensive.
Yeah. Well, it's decent, but it's low effort. And it seems, we mentioned how short it is, but it doesn't make it seem kind of rushed at points. With short run time, but it's entertaining enough. It's more of a campy thing than a classic.
We also watched
It's an easy one to make fun of.
We both watched I Was a Teenage Werewolf. And that leans much more into the teenage tropes. There's a big dance number in the middle, and Michael Landon plays this troubled teenager who gets his anger issues out through werewolfism. This one is just an innocent kid who gets attacked and killed and brought back to life, and it's not silly. It's not fun. I don't know why they made it like I Was a Teenage series.
Mm-hmm.
They were fairly serious here.
He wasn't attacked. He was in a car accident.
Well, okay, he died. He wasn't willing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Professor Frankenstein talks about transplanting eyes and other organs. One of the scientists in the audience says some of his claims are simply impossible. Dead tissue cannot be activated, says Dr. Randolph.
Little does he know.
Frankenstein says one day soon his theories will be proven.
He's already...
That sounds like Frankenstein, all right.
Yeah, and he's already reanimated some dead tissues. He hasn't put it all together yet to a whole being, but he's getting there.
Later, Frankenstein and Dr. Carlton, his physicist friend, talk about proving their ideas. Frankenstein wants to assemble a body from different cadavers. On my own, in my own laboratory. Frankenstein talks about that great ancestor whose name he bears. He thinks the key to success is to use young bodies, which are much more resilient. Oh, wait! As they speak, a car crashes outside right in the middle of their discussion.
Boy, that's convenient.
2 cars full of teenagers who were all killed. What a shame and a mess. Who will notice one missing?
So they do. They literally take one of the bodies from the accident.
Soon the 2 scientists have snuck off with one of the bodies and put it in Frankenstein's own private morgue. He's got one in his house, of course.
Of course.
He puts the body in a drawer and turns down the temperature. Carlton wants out of this silly plan, but Frankenstein has blackmail material, so he'll help with the project as required.
You will be my Igor.
The 2 men go upstairs to a party. Frankenstein says he's going to return home to England soon, and Margaret, his girlfriend and nurse, looks unhappy. He cheers her up by asking her to move in with him as his fiancée.
And secretary.
You're going to work for it.
Yep.
Carlton activates the body as Frankenstein amputates his hands and leg, and Margaret works the phone upstairs as the new watchdog. Frankenstein disposes of the leftover parts by feeding them to the alligator in the closet. Frankenstein and Carlton sneak into a funeral home and take the parts they need after another tragedy. They sew the leg and hands onto the corpse at home. Well, Frankenstein and Margaret go for a drive and park at a popular makeout spot for the local teenagers. She wants to do what the teenagers do. Well, the animated corpse is healing well, and Frankenstein wants the creature to speak. He does speak, and then he cries. Margaret suspects something is up. She's also obsessed with her impending marriage and displeased with how little of the professor's attention she gets.
He's spending way too much time with the cadavers in the basement.
Well, you gotta have your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he slaps her in the face when she gets more uppity than he likes.
He's really a dick. On multiple levels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't go along with that very well, and she starts snooping into his work. She sneaks out a key and makes her own copy to the basement, opens the morgue drawer, and the corpse sits up. She runs off without locking the door behind her. Well, Frankenstein and the monster talk, and it's clear that Frankenstein is on a power trip with his obedient creation. The monster does his weightlifting and other workouts, because, that's what teenage monsters do. The monster is tired of living in the lab. He wants to go out into the world. Frankenstein cuts off the bandages to show him why he can't, and we see that the monster is really a monster from the neck up. Yeah, he's a mess.
Yeah, he's ugly.
Well, bad things are going to happen. We know where this is going.
Yep.
I bet he don't stay in that lab for long.
He does not. He breaks out and he does naughty things.
Well, the first half hour or so is very similar to most other Frankenstein films, although a little more modern, taking place in the 50s. After that, it kind of goes its own way. And most of what we just described here, you could put almost any of the Frankenstein movies in there.
Yeah.
Of course, Dr. Frankenstein is supposed to be British, in this story too, but he's got a perfectly normal American accent.
He's been in the U.S. for a long time, I guess.
Yeah, he really hasn't. He just didn't bother.
Yeah.
And the monster here is just a big guy in a rubber mask, so this is kind of low effort in that regard. Unlike I Was a Teenage Werewolf, which came out the same year, this one doesn't really rely on the teenage angle very much. And better yet, there's no musical numbers in the middle of this one.
There totally could have been.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, doing the things that... Okay, whatever. It's low budget and low effort. By this point, Frankenstein had been relegated to Abbott and Costello movies, and this kind of thing, and other silly films. But the following year, Hammer made their version, which rejuvenated the whole franchise by taking it very seriously once again. It's fine, but I would not call it a classic.
No. I would say of all the Frankensteins, he's the biggest jerk of all the Frankensteins. And there have been some
Peter
jerky
Cushing
ones.
was pretty jerky.
He's jerky. This guy was worse.
All right.
Yeah. His thirst for knowledge and medical progress just drives him above everything else, and he's not nice to her.
He slaps the girlfriend. That
He's
makes
just
him worse
got-
than the Gravediggers.
Yeah, and he's just got a complete lack of humanity and empathy, and it's kind of appalling.
All right, speaking of appalling, I Bury the Living from 1958, directed by Albert Band, the father of Charles Band, the director we talked about a week or two ago.
Okay, yeah.
It's all in the family.
Yeah.
Nepo babies. Did I say that out loud?
You did say that, yeah.
Written by Louis Garfinkel and stars Richard Boone, the Have Gun Will Travel guy.
Mm-hmm.
Theodore Bickel, who played Worf's father in Star Trek Next Generation.
So many recognizable faces.
He played an old man in Star Trek, and he played an old man in this one, and they're like 30 years apart.
He needed less makeup in Star Trek.
Yeah. And Peggy Maurer, an hour and 17 minutes trailer in the show. No, watch it in YouTube. We got a link for that one, too.
It's another one of those.
This is benefits of the oldies.
This one was more serious, less mock-worthy.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of dumb if you think about it, but I was entertained. I liked it.
Yeah.
Well, this had a Twilight Zone vibe and a dash of Alfred Hitchcock. And I don't know that Twilight Zone was around in 58.
But this had that vibe to it.
It did.
Yeah.
With a poster that's pretty sensationalized compared to the actual movie. It moves along well, and it's very well made. The ending, though, disappointed us both. We're not going to spoil the ending here, but
So, mixed
we didn't
reviews.
care for that part too much.
Yeah, it was
good up until the ending.
So good until, like, really? That's the explanation? Yeah.
Well, what happens?
Well, we open in a cemetery, as one might guess from the title, where two men are walking into the caretaker's office. Robert Kraft is the new administrator, and the other guy is McKee, who has been the caretaker there for decades. And they talk about him being pushed into retirement, and he's pretty reluctant for retirement, but they can find a young replacement. And Kraft does say he'll still get paid, and it'll be great. But, McKee's not on board. He's really reluctant about it. Well, they put it off for now, but they both admire the elaborate map of the cemetery on the wall. And he uses a white pin on the map that shows a sold plot. People can buy them ahead of time. And then there's a black pin on a plot where the dead are, and they get switched out. Well, McKee shows where a pistol is, just in case of emergencies. And
How many pistol needs emergencies do you get at the cemetery?
it's literally Chekhov's pistol, so you know that. Well, Stuart and Elizabeth Drexel drive up. They're just married, and they got a cemetery plot there in the Immortal Hills as a requirement of Stuart's inheritance before he can access all the funds.
What a great wedding gift.
Yeah. Well, Robert complains to George, his uncle, about serving at the cemetery, but the old man insists that it's a family tradition of service to the town. Basically, this group of elite business people in the town, they all rotate around and take a year of service running the cemetery. And there's not much work to it.
It sounds like a very part-time job.
Yeah.
He goes in and checks the papers once a week.
It's good for PR. It's good for business. So, basically, George says, just shut up and do it. Well, plus he's going to have to do it if he wants to inherit the department store, too.
That's a good reason.
Yeah. Mr. Watson, the undertaker, calls to congratulate Robert on his new position and to let him know that the Drexels have suddenly died.
That young couple that was just in.
Yeah, what the heck? Well, Mr. Jessup comes to the cemetery office. He's a reporter and Bob's friend. Robert looks at the map and realizes he accidentally marked the young couple for death, or wonders about it. He put black pins in instead of white pins.
The death pins
by
instead
mistake.
of the lot pins.
Yeah, but he's thinking, it couldn't be, just a coincidence. Well, Anne, Robert's fiancée, comes in for a visit. And Robert, again, absent-mindedly, puts a black pin on the Isham plot. And elsewhere, Mr. Isham suddenly dies. Well, at the end of the week, Robert comes in to sign paperwork, and he notices the name Isham on the intake form. McKee points out that the map had a black pin on it already.
That seems like a good place to stop. That tells you the plot. He's got a death map.
Yeah. Is he causing it, or is he predicting it?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Well, this influenced Stephen King, who wrote Obits, a similar story about a man who kills by writing obituaries. And that brings up the reminder of, Death Note, the more recent Japanese film where you write your name in the notebook and they die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very weird concept, and it's pretty well executed here. We wondered early on what would happen if Robert switched a black pin for a white one. Would the dead rise? That's what we needed to see.
And fortunately, the filmmakers thought of that. And he does
And he
swap them
does,
later.
yes,
And we do
okay.
get to find out what happens.
The explanation McKee gives at the end doesn't make any sense. Actually, the whole ending doesn't make any sense. But it's basically, it's a lot like a Hitchcock film, with suspense building as Robert continues to learn more and more about what's going on in his magical death powers. The ever-growing map is a cool prop as well.
Yeah,
It starts out on the wall as
he,
a map.
He gets more and more obsessed with it. And throughout the movie, it gets bigger and bigger and takes up the entire wall eventually.
It weighs heavily on his mind.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's really well done.
It's surprisingly good up to the last 5 minutes, but the ending is confusing and doesn't work for us.
Yeah, so mixed reviews.
Yeah. Turn it off for the last 5 minutes and make up your own ending.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to do it.
All right. Well, next is 1970 is Count Yorga, Vampire. Also known as the Loves of Count Iorga, Vampire.
Well, probably still pronounced the same.
Yorga.
Yorga, yeah.
Yorshki. Okay.
Yeah.
Directed and written by Bob Keljan. Stars Robert Quarry, Roger Perry, and Michael Murphy. Hour and 33 minutes. Trailer in the show notes.
And this has an interesting backstory to it, with the production being quite a mess, I guess. This originally started out, it was intended to be a softcore porn movie. and they, somewhere along the line, they said, well, no, let's tone it down and actually make it into a serious horror movie.
Well, the poster kind of implies that, too, with the 3 half-naked women attacking a guy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And there are, like, brides of Frankenstein, brides of Dracula type gals, that he converts. But, yeah, it's rated R-ish, but, it's not softcore porn.
No.
Yeah. It's an updated vampire tale set in the modern age of 1970. Little on the predictable side, but we kind of thought it was good.
It was good enough at the time. They did make a sequel, The Return of Count Yorga, which I'm having a very hard time finding anywhere. So we won't be talking about that one anytime too soon. Probably eventually we'll get it.
Probably, yeah.
Well, we watch a coffin being loaded onto a truck from a ship and driven through time as we get a voiceover that talks about vampires and their powers and abilities. In case you've never heard of vampires, the truck with the coffin arrives at a big house in the country. And this is reused footage from, what was the other one? Blackula, possibly?
I think it was Blackula, yeah. Him arriving to the country.
Yeah, it was exactly the same scenes where they unload the box from the truck.
Yeah, coming in by ship.
You notice it's even the same truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we cut to a group of people sitting in a circle as they prepare to do a seance. The group isn't taking the thing very seriously, but Donna wants this to happen so she can talk to her dead mother. The man leading the group, Count Yorga, is also very serious about the seance. Things do take a creepy turn, and there's lots of screaming. Donna faints, and Yorga takes care of her, but Michael doesn't like any of this. Yorga hypnotizes her secretly, and the others have no idea. He leaves shortly after without eating or drinking anything.
He gets his kicks. He's getting his kicks.
Yeah. Later, Donna explains that Yorga was her mother's boyfriend for the 3 weeks before she died. He talked Donna out of having her mother cremated. He didn't want to come to the funeral, which is odd.
Almost, because, the funeral was probably during the day.
Some of the guests drive Yorga home, and they meet his creepy servant, Bruda. He invites Paul and Erica in for a drink. She's interested, but Paul says not tonight. They drive off, but soon get stuck in the mud. Funny that road wasn't wet before. They don't go back to the Count's house. Instead, they have sex in the back of the van. As one does, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. It was the 70s, yeah.
Soon, Count Yorga comes to the van, and it's now obvious that he's a vampire. Paul is knocked out, and Erica loses her memory of whatever happens.
And so does Paul. He doesn't remember.
Erica has lost a lot of blood and is dizzy. Dr. Jim Hayes tells her to eat a lot of rare steaks to fix that. I'm sure that'll fix it, drinking cow blood. It must be the 2 bite marks on her throat, which she can't explain.
Oh, my.
Paul and Mike talk about hypnosis and how good Yorga was at it with Donna. Erica also lost her memory. Could the 2 be connected? They go over to Erica's house, which is a mess, and they find her eating her cat.
Oh, my.
2 handfuls of fur.
Doctor did say to eat lots of red meat.
Not that red. Paul then donates blood for a transfusion to Erica, administered by Jim and Mike. They don't go to the hospital; they do it right there in the apartment.
And they didn't kill a real cat for the effect. I saw that in the trivia. It's a sedated cat covered with canned ravioli.
Wow, that's digging.
Yeah.
Well, we cut to Count Yorga's castle, where he has two women sleeping on stone slabs. When he comes in, the two women wake up. They're vampires too, and one of them is Donna's dead mother.
That's why he didn't want her cremated.
Well, Jim talks to Paul and Mike about vampires. Yorga is supposed to be from Bulgaria, and that fits the profile. Those freaking Bulgarians.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how unlikely that is, but they don't really rule it out either. Well, Yorga looks out the window, and somewhere else, Erica wakes up and talks to her window and opens it. Then she waits on her bed as Yorga arrives to bite her again. When Paul comes home, Erica is gone. And vampire hijinks ensue.
They do, as the guys get more and more suspicious, and they take some action against Count Yorga.
Yeah.
But, of course, Count Yorga, being ancient, he's a savvy vampire.
He's a smart one, yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Well, as you said already, this was intended to be a softcore porn movie, but actor Robert Quarry had done a few things before this, and he was starting to get fairly big, and he insisted it be switched to just a standard horror movie. They wanted him, so they went along with it. And you can see kind of where this was intended to go with a few of the side characters, like Jim's girlfriend. She just walks around the house topless and talks. A terrible, terrible actress. You know what her assets were.
Mm-hmm. Boobies.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Count Yorga character was originally intended to be the villain in the second Dr. Phibes movie. Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
It's Robert Quarry
It's the
playing
same
the
actor,
villain there,
yes.
but he's not Count Yorga.
But for some reason, they ended up reworking the character to be a different kind of immortal character, but still played by Robert Quarry. Remembering Dr. Phibes, I don't see any reason that character couldn't have been a vampire.
He could have been.
Except that doesn't explain why he got old at the end.
Well, because the serum ran out. He ran out of his
What
immortality
does a vampire
serum.
need that for, though?
Well, he did. Well,
That's one of the reworking things.
Plus, he would have been limited to nighttime too, and this let him be out during the day.
I don't remember him actually being out in the day in Dr. Phibes. He might have been.
It was desert. It was deserty and hot, and yeah, it didn't limit him that way.
It would have been cool, though. Crossover we didn't know we needed.
Yeah.
It was an attempt to modernize the vampire story to the modern in quotes, 1970 time period, and taking modern science and skepticism into account. They'd spent a lot of time talking about could vampires be real or not. There's not a lot here that's really surprising or unexpected, but it's a good if you're a fan of the movies of that period. It's a lot more modern than any of the Hammer kind of movies that took place around this time, but it's still pretty old.
You know, and when I said earlier in this podcast that of these five I had not seen them, I misspoke. This was one I had seen.
You had seen this,
I was thinking of something else. Yeah, Count Yorga, and actually I'm quite sure I saw it at the drive-in when it came out. I barely remember it. And then I saw it again, some years later on TV.
You were like 4 years old at the time?
4 or 5, yeah. But my folks took me to movies. The drive-in was a thing especially, but sometimes even at the theater, they had no qualms about adult movies, R-rated movies, and I hazily remember it. I'm quite sure that I did, yeah.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
Dracula and Son, 1976, directed by Edouard Molinaro. Written by Alain Godard, Jean-Marie Poiret, and Edouard Molinaro. Stars Christopher Lee, Bernard Menez, and Marie-Helene Briat. Hour and 18 minutes, and this is another one you can watch on YouTube. Only one so far you can't watch is Yorga.
Yeah. Well, Christopher Lee provides a mostly serious balance to the comedy elements, which I liked, because it would have been way too silly without some seriousness from the gravitas of his performance. Mostly serious. I mean,
there's one comedy character in an otherwise seriously movie. Yeah.
He was in on the jokes, too. But, it was a nice mix of humor and horror. The script is decent, and the sets were really cool. We both enjoyed it more than we expected. I
would call it much more comedy than horror. But, I mean, it is about vampires, and Christopher Lee's in it, so, yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I thought it looked kind of stupid from the poster. The poster's got Christopher Lee, Dracula, leading around this kid with a big nose, says Transylvania University on his shirt. You figure, oh, he's got a bicycle too, so, you know, Dracula and Son, what are you expecting?
And he wasn't Dracula.
He wasn't.
It's in the title, but
a couple places they mention his name on the door, like on the door. He has a name on the door, and they call him something else. It's not really Dracula, but it's called that.
It's kind of part of the joke that he's Dracula, but nobody ever calls him that, or he doesn't use the name.
Yeah. Well, it's a comedy, but it's not. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, it's a comedy, but it's good anyway.
Yeah, it was.
It's 1784 in Transylvania. The carriage crashes through the forest. We'll never make it before nightfall if we don't hurry. Then the wheel breaks. They all know what that means. One of the passengers pretends he's a vampire and scares the young woman passenger. Well, the Count sends another carriage to pick up his young fiancée. We'll never see them again, says the man they leave behind in the first carriage. Young Hermione's chaperone gets bitten before they even arrive at the castle. When she arrives, she's greeted by the Count himself. Yeah, he's Dracula, so she faints. Plop.
Plop.
Well, we cut then to them having sex later. I want you to bear me a child, he says. And he soon gets one, and then bites her as the baby rocks in a little baby-sized coffin. There's one of our first jokes, the little baby sleeping in a baby-sized coffin.
Uh-huh.
Well, we cut to two men talking about how to kill vampires. These were the men who were in the other carriage the previous year. They haven't forgotten, but no trace was ever found of that girl. Hermione comes to town for her first meal as a vampire and kills one of those men. This goes badly, and she soon finds herself racing back to the castle as the sun starts to rise. The carriage arrives, but she's just a pile of dust.
Whoops.
Too late.
Yep.
Well, 5 years pass, and Ferdinand runs through the castle. Drink your blood and go to bed. Marguerite, the old woman vampire, generally takes care of the boy, who locks her outside as the sun rises. Wow.
Mischievous little scamp, isn't he?
116 years later, Ferdinand still hasn't bitten anyone, and the Count says it's about time.
And he's grown up now.
Yes. 116 years, and he's a
he looks
old
about
teenager, 20-ish,
Yeah.
So he sets Ferdinand up with an old woman who's traveling alone, and he befriends the old woman instead. In the present-day Romania, the Count doesn't appreciate the new communist regime. The peasants have taken over his castle. Well, they're there, of course. The two vampires barely make it out alive. They kill a pair of sailors and trade places with the bodies in their coffin, which are then buried at sea. Ferdinand's coffin washes up on the shore and gets wound up with an immigrant man. The Count, on the other hand, gets caught in a fishing net and taken to London. They both have a rough first night in civilization. So how are they going to get along now that they've been separated? Ferdinand is a vampire who's never drank blood, and the Count is, well, he's Dracula. The Dracula,
sort of. But they never say that.
Actually, this was the final time Christopher Lee played Dracula, more or less. The character isn't really named Dracula except for the title.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at him, you know who he is.
He's the Count.
And it was his last time to play this. It's described as a parody and comedy, but there's a lot here for horror fans to like. Christopher Lee mostly plays it straight, which contrasts with Ferdinand's comedic side. It wasn't bad, and I liked it more than I thought I would.
Yeah. I think that Christopher Lee, had a smirk and a wink going on.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely in on it. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah. I think he had a good time with it. It looks like he did.
A bunch of people not having a very good time is 2003's Final Destination 2. Directed by David R. Ellis, written by J. Mackie Gruber, Eric Bress, and Jeffrey Reddick, stars A.J. Cook, Ali Larder, and Tony Todd. It's an hour and a half, and there's a trailer in the usual place.
Tony Todd is back.
He is. Spoiler-free.
Well, the chains of events that led to deaths are complicated, and they don't always go the way you're expecting. Clear, a girl's name, if you remember, she's a survivor from the first movie. And she's back, and this time there's a new batch of doomed people who are hoping to survive. And it's not a spoiler to say that most of them don't, but the fun is seeing who gets it and how and when, and it was decently made. If you like the first one, you'll probably like this one too.
Of all the ones I've seen, I'm going to say they're all pretty much the same.
They are, yeah, we've seen 3 of them so far.
Everybody dies in the opening act. It gets rewound, and then they all die again for the most part.
For the
except
most
for
part.
one or two, but usually.
And they figure it out, and they're trying to fight it. Yeah.
And they're very complex, Rube Goldberg-y deaths that are just...
Chain of
you know
events,
they're
and
coming, but you can't quite figure out how they're going to happen, and that's the fun part.
Yeah, weird and random. Yeah.
All these movies are the same. Quality-wise, acting-wise. If you like one, you'll like them all.
So far.
So far, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the same thing over and over. So if you like it, you like it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
A news report tells us that it's the 1-year anniversary since the airplane crashed in the previous film. 40 students died on that plane, but all the students who didn't board the plane also died. The guest on the show basically explains how death itself came for those students as the credits roll. No one can escape death. Today may be your day to die.
Maybe.
So this guy, he's got it all figured out on TV. Kimberly and her friends are going on a trip. As they drive away, we see the car has been leaking something. The kids stop at a light as a homeless woman comes to the window and scares them. They get moving and drive past a school bus full of chanting students. We see various other cars, motorcycles, and other dangerous-looking things going on. Kimberly's dad calls about the leak. A giant log truck passes them on the right as the young people panic about a cop following them. Do you know how much pot I've got in my pocket? It's quite involved in the setup for what we already know is going to happen. Suddenly, everything goes haywire all at once. The log truck loses a log, which kills the cop and the motorcyclist. Another truck kills the stoner. A group of families crash into logs and explode. One guy gets beheaded explosively. Kimberly's car rolls over, and then another truck kills them all.
And then Kimberly wakes up. That didn't happen. It was a vision.
She looks at the homeless woman. What? Kimberly knows what's going to happen and blocks traffic instead. All the cars behind them are stopped as well, so everyone waits for the traffic to clear.
And that's a number of people that were going to be involved in the accident are not now.
Then the log truck drives by, and Kimberly tells the cop what's going to happen. And then it does, killing lots of other people, including everyone in Kimberly's car, except for her.
And the people...
They drive off without her.
Yeah. Well, they didn't drive off behind her. A car hit them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she was out of the car. The cop shoved her out of the way as the remaining friends that were in the car. But the people behind her, who were supposed to die in the accident, didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Kimberly tells the cop that this might be just like that airplane crash thing last year. The police bring in all the people who survived the accident. Maybe death will be coming for all of them now. Maybe it's not over. Evan, one of the survivors, only just won the lottery yesterday, so he goes home with his shopping and fixes dinner. The microwave shorts, which causes him to drop a ring in the sink. He gets his hand stuck in the drain because of his Rolex, and the dinner on the stove catches on fire, setting off the smoke alarm. The whole kitchen then catches on fire. He pops his hand out of the drain, but can't get out of the burning apartment. He breaks a window and goes down the fire escape as the apartment explodes all around him. He almost dies 100 different ways, but then the fire escape ladder falls on his head.
Ouch.
Smoosh.
Yeah.
Well, that was complex.
That was a painful looking one, too.
I kept waiting for the garbage disposal to chew his hand up, but it didn't.
No.
Well, Thomas, the cop, researches freak accidents, especially the one from the first film. Everyone from that accident watches the news, and they all recognize Evan, who was with them earlier.
Maybe there is something to this.
Only Clear Rivers survived the events of the first film, but she's been institutionalized.
Voluntarily. Yeah, and she's been hiding. They kind of hid the fact that she was a survivor. Because the anniversary news thing said, oh, they all died.
But they didn't really.
They didn't really. She's been hiding out. They're trying to.
Well, Kimberly tells her about her experience and is told now that she'll be the last to die. Kimberly explained that that's not the way it's been happening. Clear tells her to watch out for the signs of death. Well, Thomas comes to Kimberly. The survivors all want to meet. Nora and Tim Carpenter, mother and son survivors, are next up, and Kimberly thinks they'll be killed by pigeons. They all have some way of telling how they're going to die.
There's a hint.
But they're vague enough that you can't really do much about it.
Yeah, how are you going to prevent it? Yeah.
Well, Tim goes to the dentist. We watch the fish in an aquarium in the waiting room, as well as construction going on outside the office.
There's a whole lot of dangerous things going on.
A pigeon crashes into the window as the dentist gets ready to work. The doctor turns on the oxygen with the laughing gas, but an electrical short takes out the oxygen. With 100 things going on at once, Tim chokes on a rubber fish, almost. As they leave in complete safety, Tim is squashed flat by the construction equipment. Didn't see that coming.
We should stop there.
We should, yes. You know how this is going to go. They're all going to die painfully until the end, and maybe somebody will, maybe they won't.
Maybe, yeah.
It's one damn thing after another, the movie.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we have a link in the commentary here to the original Final Destination movie from 2000, and the whole film has a really weak story. The only reason to watch this is for the crazy Rube Goldberg death traps.
Yeah.
The story's not mine. You know what the story is. We've told you the story. The first one told you the story. Mm-hmm. The third and the fourth one had the same story.
Probably.
It's the same outline with different deaths.
Yeah.
They're really elaborate here, and sometimes they're just red herrings, but sometimes they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked it.
You know, and it kind of troubles me. I mean, as far as elaborate as the deaths were, Clear is hiding out in this institution.
Something could have happened to her, too.
She's in a padded room, and the nurse, before she lets the Kimberly in to see her, says, you got any knives on you? You got any, and she lists off all the things, and Clear is just, basically living with, sponges and padded walls, But, if death wanted to kill her, it would.
Yeah, I mean, there's, stuff falls from the sky all the time.
Yeah, lightning bolt or meteor or whatever, But other than that, I believed everything that happened.
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time in real life.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
it was a worthy sequel.
Next up, we have next week, more movies.
More stuff.
We got some really good ones next week.
We do.
And a stinker or two as well.
We watched some really good ones.
I was surprised how good some of these were that I hadn't expected to be much.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about those next week. We'll leave you in suspense.
Mm-hmm.
We're like Hitchcock. Come back next week.
Come back next week.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.